The executive floor froze when Jacob placed his badge beside the resignation letter. 5 years of saving Vanguard from disaster ended without a raised voice. He didn't argue. He simply turned toward the elevator. But before the doors closed, CEO Marcus rushed across the lobby, calling his name for the first time in years. By then, Jacob had already made a decision no salary could change. Before we continue, if stories about loyalty, respect, and difficult choices speak to you, write in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's see how one quiet decision changed 2 companies forever. 5 years earlier, Jacob joined Vanguard with a reputation for solving problems no one else wanted to touch. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room. While executives explained success to reporters, Jacob sat at another table, finding solutions before anyone realized there was a crisis. It became an unspoken routine. Whenever an important client threatened to leave, Marcus called Jacob. Whenever negotiations reached a dead end, Marcus called Jacob. Jacob never complained. He believed real leaders were recognized by results, not attention. Marcus respected him, but rarely showed it publicly, often crediting successful projects to the company instead of to Jacob. Jacob accepted it, sure recognition would come eventually. Months turned into years. One difficult contract after another found its way to his desk. Every time, Jacob quietly rebuilt trust before panic reached the boardroom. Employees often joked that Vanguard had 2 chief executives. One appeared on magazine covers, the other quietly prevented those magazines from writing about disasters. Jacob laughed along. Deep inside, though, he hoped the company already knew his value. Then, an announcement changed everything. The director of operations was retiring after nearly 20 years. For the first time since joining Vanguard, Jacob allowed himself to imagine a different future. Not for prestige or a title, but for confirmation that years of invisible sacrifices had mattered. Rumors spread through every department. Managers congratulated him in advance. Everything pointed toward Jacob. Marcus scheduled a company-wide meeting. Hundreds of employees gathered, and excitement filled the room. He stepped onto the stage, thanked everyone for another successful year, praised teamwork and loyalty. Then he announced the new director of operations. It wasn't Jacob. Marcus proudly welcomed Elizabeth. She stepped onto the stage with a confident smile as applause echoed through the room. She had impressive education and endless confidence. But she had never managed the crises that built Vanguard's reputation or earned the trust Jacob spent years protecting. Jacob applauded with everyone else, though his hand stopped a beat before anyone else's. Around the room, employees exchanged confused looks, and several department heads lowered their eyes. Even Elizabeth seemed uncomfortable, sensing the silence behind the applause. Jacob returned to his office without a word. His desk looked the same as it had that morning, only now it no longer felt like home. One by one, co-workers stopped by. Some apologized, others blamed office politics. Jacob simply smiled and thanked them for the years they'd shared. Late that afternoon, Marcus entered his office and explained that investors wanted a familiar public face. Leading operations, Elizabeth's family connections would strengthen confidence in an uncertain market. Marcus finished with quiet confidence. "Your time will come." Jacob looked at the projects covering his desk. Years of solving impossible problems, of carrying responsibilities that rarely carried his name. After a long silence, he slowly closed his laptop, removed his badge, and placed it on the desk between them. For the first time in 5 years, Marcus's confidence disappeared. Marcus remained motionless. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Finally, almost under his breath, Marcus asked, "Is this really about the promotion?" Jacob looked at him without anger. Quietly, he replied, "No, it's about spending 5 years proving my value and realizing I was the only one who still had to." He walked away. Marcus followed him through the lobby, calling his name as employees watched in stunned silence. For the first time, the confident CEO looked uncertain. Jacob never turned around. The following weeks began with small cracks nobody noticed. A client waited longer for answers. A project needed extra corrections. Meetings ran longer, since no one else understood every moving part of the company. Elizabeth worked harder than anyone expected, arriving early, staying late. She wasn't lazy or careless. She'd simply inherited a role built on years of experience she'd never lived through. And every decision revealed another hidden responsibility Jacob had quietly carried. Then, the bigger consequences arrived. A major client questioned Vanguard's ability to handle a complicated project. Another delayed a partnership. Investors who once praised Marcus started asking uncomfortable questions. Elizabeth looked through hundreds of reports, searching for the reason behind the decline. Eventually, she found the answer. It wasn't one mistake or one bad decision. It was the absence of one person who had spent years preventing thousands of mistakes from happening. Jacob. Marcus finally discovered a painful pattern. Nearly every successful system, every major client, and every emergency plan had been built or improved by Jacob. Only after losing him did he understand his value. If you've ever seen someone overlooked simply because they didn't seek attention, leave a like, and let's continue. Meanwhile, Jacob accepted an offer from a small startup called Horizon. There were no luxurious offices or famous executives, only a team that valued experience and listened before deciding. For the first time in years, Jacob wasn't trying to convince anyone that he belonged. His work spoke for itself. He simplified processes, encouraged teamwork, and rewarded people for solving problems, not taking credit. The difference was immediate. Employees became more confident, projects moved faster, and clients noticed the change. Within a year, Horizon became one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. Ironically, several of its biggest clients had once belonged to Vanguard. Marcus watched the company struggle quarter after quarter. But the hardest part wasn't losing money. It was realizing that the person he had failed to recognize had become the person everyone else wanted to follow. Almost a year later, both companies attended the same business conference. Marcus quietly approached Jacob. The confidence that once defined him had been replaced by humility. After a long silence, he admitted, "I believed connections built strong companies. I was wrong. People like you do." Jacob listened without interrupting. Then he answered calmly, "Success isn't built by the people everyone notices. It's built by the people everyone depends on." Marcus lowered his eyes. He understood there was nothing left to offer. Not a title, a contract, or more money. Some opportunities disappear the moment respect arrives too late. Jacob shook his hand politely and returned to the colleagues who had believed in him from the beginning. He no longer needed approval from someone who never understood the difference between influence and real professionalism. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who has ever felt overlooked, and tell us in the comments, if you were Jacob, would you have accepted Marcus's apology and returned, or chosen a new beginning?